Hey guys, welcome to another video. So, the time has finally come. The end of phase 4 of Calisthenic Movements Level 5 Mastery Program is now. In this video, we're going to go over all the usual ins and outs, all the juicy little details, but as well, if you stick around towards the end, we are going to go even deeper as I am going to break down the entire program through phases 1, 2, 3, and 4, so the entire 16 weeks, into a few different subcategories to really kind of help you get a gist of the program and tell you my overall experiences. So we're going to look at things like how good it was for muscle gain, how good it was for skill gain, how good it was for conditioning, how user-friendly it was, etc, etc, etc. So get yourself ready, strap yourself in, get the concentration face on, and enjoy the video. So the general gist of this phase was a higher frequency approach. So in the first 3 phases, it was 4 days a week. This time round, it went up to 5 days a week. So it just meant a slightly higher frequency, although CaliMove's did account for the volume coming down slightly. So the workouts were very kind of basic. It was pretty much 2 main exercises per workout, with the exception of, I think on 2 of the days, there was a leg exercise at the end. And then on the other 3 days, there was a 15-minute handstand practice once again at the beginning. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I'm going to hold my hands up and say that I didn't always do the workouts every single day. So I didn't do the 5-day frequency. What I did instead is I actually added sometimes 2 lots of workouts onto the back of whatever I was already doing. So like I said in the last video, I have been doing quite a bit of skill work and a few other bits around this program. But rest assured, as always, I promise you, I did the program in its entirety as it was written. I just didn't always find a 5-day-a-week frequency. And in terms of movements that arrived on the scene in this phase, we did see the return of the unilateral movements, which were in phase 2. As I showed you last time, I was a little bit gutted to see the one-arm push-up go, but it came back this time. Not only did it come back, but the unilateral movements, the volume increased as well. So the rep ranges went up a bit. So you're really trying to push the parameters on these. Alongside that, we saw 1 or 2 exercises come back from the original phases, one of which was the controversial ice cream maker. So the front lever to pull up and backwards and forwards, hence the name, like an ice cream maker lever. Just as a side note, in case anyone didn't realize where the name come from, because I see this all the time on things like Instagram and Reddit, people wondering why it's called an ice cream maker. Generally, it's to mimic the lever. If you pull ice cream out of a lever, like that, so backwards and forwards. Again, controversial movement, as some people say it's not a great movement for the front lever, but this was back in this phase. I will touch upon the quality of this movement in terms of front lever gains later in the video. Another thing we saw as well was the planche push-up arrive. So there's been a lot of planche drills prior to this, leading up to now, but we hadn't actually seen the tuck planche push-up and its variations arrive until this phase, which was quite exciting because, in all honesty, I pretty much suck at anything planche. I'm only really at a tuck planche level. As you can see here, I barely can do a tuck planche push-up with perfect form yet. It is something I'm working on. The reason I'm not so good at it is weak shoulders, as well as pretty much a lack of direct training to this movement. Something I did like, as you might see in the video here, was the mechanical advantage planche push-up. So I'm going up in a tuck position, but as I go down, I actually lower to a full bent arm planche position, which is a really nice feeling on the front shoulders and the serratus. So if you're one of these people that, let's say, finds tuck planche quite easy in the tuck shape, try and open out to a bent arm planche on the way down and see how you get on the way up. The handstand push-up was subbed out in favor of the Bulgarian dip. So handstand push-up, vertical push upwards, shoulder dominant, Bulgarian dip, vertical push downwards, pec dominant. The lower body movements were still quite minimal. Are we noticing a theme here? I guess you guys saw that coming. We still have 1 exercise at the back of 1 session. We have another exercise at the back of another session. So basically 2 exercises done once per week, but the legs are hit twice per week, technically speaking, and they are hit in an ascending volume fashion. So like a step set increase fashion once again. Week 1, 3 sets. Week 2, 4 sets. Week 3, 5 sets. Week 4, 6 sets. Time for the real stuff now. So the likes versus the dislikes. We're going to start with the likes first. So the first thing I liked about this, and the main thing I liked about this was definitely the best mixture of movements in any of the phases so far. What I mean by that is that these movements are quite ego friendly. There was some cool stuff going on here. Obviously, one arm push-ups, one arm ring rows. You had archer chin-ups. We had the Bulgarian dip, as I've mentioned before. We even had planche push-up variations, all kinds of front lever variations. There was a lot going on in this program. It was a very busy kind of phase. And because the volume was increasing, you were always kept on your toes. There was not really too long to adapt to something. And for me, being a little bit more advanced than perhaps maybe the normal person that's doing this program, I really liked that. It really kept me on my toes. And talking the progression model, this is another thing that I liked here, was just how simple it was. So obviously you just increase a set each week. There is no need to worry about increasing reps theoretically here, because what you could do is you could find, let's say hypothetically, your 5-rep max on a certain exercise, work it for 3 sets on week 1, and just adding that extra quality set week by week will take care of all the progression needs you could ever really want in an ideal world. And there's nothing to say that that cycle couldn't be, in theory, repeated over and over. So you would reach a peak, let's say 5 or 6 sets of 5 on a given movement by week 4 or 3, deload, come back again. You could start off with a new rep range, 6 or 7 reps, and try to repeat the process. Obviously, there's going to be a tapering out point as well here, guys, where you will hit a point where you can't add reps or sets, at which point you can probably progress the movement, but that's probably lying outside of this video a little bit. Nevertheless, I really like the principle that they used in terms of progression in this phase. And something else that my nerdy eye picked up on was the ring dip progression here. So we've just mentioned that the Bulgarian dip is in phase 4, but if we cast our minds back to phase 1, that's where we started with the basic ring dip. And then in phase 2, you may remember me complaining about boob soreness from the high volume ring chest flies. But when you actually look at what was going on here, you'll realize that this was all conditioning us towards Bulgarian dip. Obviously, where the Bulgarian dip is a wider grip dip position, there are more force on the pec, the shoulder structures, and even the bicep tendons here. So you can see that what CaliMove were doing was basically trying to condition you towards the Bulgarian dip. Obviously, I've got experience with the Bulgarian dip, but if you were someone who runs this program in the future, or you watch this, you might find that you unlock the Bulgarian dip during the process of this program. And it's always super cool to unlock new movements. We can add reps to existing movements all we want, but there's no better feeling than unlocking something for the first time. Am I right? And it makes me wonder whether this was a conscious inclusion from calisthenic movement. What do you reckon, guys? Do you reckon that they put that in there knowingly, or do you think I've just stumbled across that and it's just a coincidence? They're usually too good of a team to just have coincidences like that. What are we saying? All right, guys, brace yourselves. It's time to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer and go over the dislikes of this program. But of course, we've got to give it some constructive criticism, such has been the theme in all the previous videos. And let's get this one out the way. You're probably going to be super tired of hearing this. So if you are, cover your ears. You've heard me say this 1,000 times before, but there was some high volume static holds in this phase. Obviously, they were still of quite long duration without giving the actual program specifics away, but they were hard enough at times where you had to regress down to even as little as, say, an active hang for front lever and a planche lean on planche. That's fine with my ego, but also keep in mind for front lever, I can actually hold a full front lever when fresh, but the amount of volume here did sometimes reduce me down to just a mere active hang. So if you haven't got a full front lever, you're going to do very well to be holding anything like a tuck or an advanced tuck for the volumes there. The same could be said for the planche. Unless you're an absolute planche beast, you're going to probably struggle here. So again, that's another one of my criticisms here, that I think perhaps the hold time should have been a little bit shorter, slightly more intense. And the higher frequency, as I alluded to at the beginning of the video, could be a possible sticking point or stumbling block for a few people that might watch this. Some people do well on a slightly lower frequency, plus they might find it hard to get access to, let's say you're visiting a gym every single day and visit the gym 5 days a week. Their schedule may not allow that. As I said earlier, the fact I was doing other things, it meant that certain days I was forced to recover because I was just too beaten up to train on that given day. But it's nothing you can't work around. As I said, I could just divide the program up into lesser days and still follow it as written. That's what I get really for trying to ride 2 horses with only 1 arse, which is always something you should avoid in this game, but I managed it okay, and that's less of a fault of CaliMove's and more of a fault of mine for trying to do everything at once and hold my hands up. Now that leads us on to minimal leg exercises are coming up again. This seems to be a common thing. I sit here, I've said this to the camera countless times now, but what I would have liked to have seen in this phase, considering it is the last phase, is potentially a sort of last hurrah or a grand finale. So maybe we could have worked towards a certain leg skill or got closer to a certain leg skill. So it doesn't need to be weightlifting movements. It could even just be like a sissy squat progression, or we start looking at a shrimp squat progression. Again, I know I've been doing these throughout the program myself, like doing a slightly separate leg day because I'm used to doing that. But if you were doing this and this was your first time exposed to more of the bodyweight style of leg training, I feel like you could have got quite adapted and possibly a little bit bored of doing similar movements from phase to phase. So it would have been nice to have possibly seen, you know, like I said, opening the gates to heaven almost and seeing more out there and going, wow, is this what really awaits me? And the last thing, and probably the most important criticism I have, guys, is that that's it. Phase 4, done. There's nothing coming up. I can't review a 5th phase, and I've really quite enjoyed getting my critical eye out and deconstructing what's been going on in these phases. So it would have been nice to have found another phase, but all good things come to an end. 16 weeks is a nice time frame for a program, and I guess it's quite fitting to finish with quite an intense and busy phase. All right, so this is the part of the video that I teased at the beginning. This is where we're going to break down all the different subcategories within the program and rate them out of 5. And we're going to start with the most important category, which is the skill development category. Obviously, as calisthenic athletes, most people do these programs because they want to eventually go on to achieve skills like the planche, the front lever, the human flag, the back lever, the handstand, the L-sit, the ring flows, all the cool stuff that you see online, all the stuff that inspires you. That is the main purpose of this program. And the score I am giving this is a 4 out of 5 for skill development. I found that my front lever improved whilst doing this program. I also found that my planche, although it is weak anyway, just through lack of training and having naturally weak shoulders, still improved. The tuck planche position feels a lot better. The planche push-ups feel better. And I do feel like I've got a better mind-muscle connection with my scapula. Obviously, this program isn't designed to take you from not even being able to hold a tuck planche or a tuck front lever all the way to the full lever. But what this program is there to do is to move you closer along the journey. So for that, like I said, we're giving it a solid 4 out of 5 for skill gain and skill development. Arguably the next most important factor here, how about muscle gain, aka hypertrophy or hypertrophy, depending on how you say it. What do you think, guys? Is it hypertrophy or is it hypertrophy? Let me know in the comments down below. And I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 for this. So not as effective for muscle growth as it is for skills, obviously, because if you said to me that you wanted to gain the most amount of muscle possible, I wouldn't give you this program to do. There are quite a few other training styles and programs that I would recommend. Although having said that, there were phases in this program that would have worked well for putting on muscle, such as the high volume work in phase 2 for the dynamic exercises where I was complaining about being sore. And overall, with the set increases, although the reps were quite moderate throughout the program because the sets were going up, that volume increase would have contributed to some good muscle growth, particularly if you wasn't used to this style of training, as the stimulus would have been new. For me personally, I would say there wasn't that much appreciable hypertrophy or muscle gain experienced on this program alone, although it's very hard to measure it purely from this program because of the other bits and pieces I've been doing outside of this plan, as I've been forever holding my hands up and disclaiming all the way through making these videos. So, and again, I've been training for over 5 years now, pretty consistently, pretty properly. I'm a lifetime natural as well, and I think I'm pretty close to my genetic potential. So to see appreciable size gains across a, 16-week or maybe 20 weeks because of all the kind of stop-starting and the deloading over a 20-week phase is asking a lot at this stage in the game for me. But that doesn't mean that you guys, if you're fresher in your journey, wouldn't experience better gains than me in terms of muscle growth. Everybody responds differently. So on to category number 3, and that is strength gain. How strong can you get from this program? Don't get confused, guys. Muscle gain and strength gain are somewhat synonymous, but they are quite different. Muscle gain is the cell swelling and the bigger appearance. Strength gain is more of a neurological connection, so the ability of the brain to connect to the muscles, fire the muscles to produce as much force as possible. In this program, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 overall for strength gain. A lot of it is orientated towards strength development, which is the leveling up of the skills as well. They're somewhat interchangeable. And if you follow this program, you will find that your strength will increase quite significantly, especially if you're new to a lot of these movements, and you will see yourself moving quite far up the skills continuum. Again, skill and strength development, very much synonymous. So 4 out of 5 for strength. The next category we're going to look at is one you might not even expect to be on here, and that is the mobility or flexibility category. So how well does this program improve your ability to move your joints through space and your overall flexibility? So we're going to score it with a 1 out of 5. Obviously, this program doesn't promise to be a mobility program. It is a strength and skills based program mostly. Having said that, upon thinking about it a little bit deeper, if you weren't too experienced with some of the extreme positions that these skills offer, such as the handstand with the shoulder flexion overhead, you could probably see some gains there from that. In the earlier rounds, there was the skin the cat, aka 360 pulls, where you would have seen some potential gains in your shoulder extension flexibility in the German hang. And of course, there was some V-sit activity as well throughout the program. So that could also improve your active pikes, your active hamstring flexibility, the ability to lift your legs up close to your face. But overall, guys, I can't rate it very high because there was very little direct flexibility work. Obviously, it's not a flexibility program, but I wanted to cover this category because flexibility is crucial in making these movements easier. If you're not mobile and you can't access a position, you're heavier, it requires more force to get into it, and it just feels worse. Trust me on that one. Once you improve your flexibility and you realize how much your flexibility was lacking, you will get a completely different and new understanding for skills. You will realize that some of these skills are not pure strength based, but they are also mobility based. Another slightly odd category we're going to feature here, what about conditioning? So does this program give you much of an endurance gain? Is it good for body composition? Is there much work capacity benefits here? Well, we're going to rate this with a 2 out of 5 for this, purely because obviously where we're at level 5 now, most of the focus is towards gaining skills and strength. Obviously, fatigue is the enemy of strength, power, and skill development. Write that one down. Remember that quote, guys. So therefore, it stands to reason that there's not that much conditioning work or high rep stuff in this phase. Having said that, I think I'm right in saying, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, that in the earlier levels, say levels 1 to 3, there is a little bit more of a higher workload, higher reps, and that stands to reason because the idea is you are building your work capacity and building your base to perform from for the latter stages. I know in the old templates all those years ago when I did it, I think in the earlier rounds there was a little bit more conditioning work. There was a conditioning day, if I remember rightly, but in the more modern phase they keep it quite simple and they stick more towards skill and strength preparation, and it makes sense. But therefore we're still going to give it a 2 out of 5. And the last category I want to look at here is user friendliness. It makes sense. You want a program that's easy to use, where you can just put all your efforts into actually progressing within the program itself. So for this category, we are giving it a 5 out of 5. Calisthenic Movements Level 5 Mastery Program is super simple to use. All the movements, the lectures, and the workouts are all on the website under the interactive dashboard. It's pretty easy to follow along. There are instruction videos that have got voiceovers by Alex himself, and they explain all the key points of the form of what to do and what not to do. So this is a program that's very difficult to screw up. And having said that, if you do need further information, anytime in the past that I've emailed Calisthenic Movement for clarification on things, they are quite rapid email responders, or at least they were back in the day. Considering how big a team they are, I mean, they've got like 3 million plus subscribers. So can you imagine what it must be like to look inside their inbox? But nevertheless, they do their best to get back to you. So you're never left in the dark. This is invaluable when it comes to running these programs, especially if you're not that versed anyway. You do not want to be getting lost. You want simplicity so that you can just make all the gains. And before we wrap up this already lengthy and detailed video, I did want to leave with one final section. Because it's the final time we're going to do this, I wanted to get into some things that I would do differently and I think CaliMove could improve upon. Just from my perspective as a coach and from my experience in the game, I sat there and I really trawled over my notes to come up with a few of these key points here, but I do think this would make the program even better if this stuff was in here. So one of the things that came to mind was a little bit more strength and mobility exercises, particularly for the lower body. So an idea that I had here was they could have used the Cossack squat, which I know plays a big role in their mobility program. So maybe they were trying to keep that separate, but I don't see why they couldn't have started us off in the first two phases with some Cossack squat progressions that then work you towards the pistol squat, and then taking the pistol squat one step further by possibly combining it with shrimp squats. Who knows? Another thing they could have done is some single leg RDL exercises on a deficit with some light weights. That could be really, really good for obviously working the glute medius as well as improving general hamstring mobility from side to side. Another thing that would or could have been nice to see here was some assistance work for common weak areas in regards to skills. So for one arm chin up, obviously weak biceps is a classic hindrance in some people. And for handstand push-ups, weak triceps can be obviously a big limiting point. I think that calisthenic movement could have worked in maybe the odd optional finisher that is fairly low taxing at certain points within the program that might boost people's progress. It's not necessarily going to make or break you, but that's just me speaking as someone who's tried to train for these moves and knows the common limiting factors, and those two things wouldn't have hurt, plus they would have boosted the possible hypertrophy gains that we would have seen in this program. And there's no prizes for guessing this next point. Obviously, you could see this one coming. One of my critiques here is that I wouldn't have done the high volume static holds. I would probably have subbed them out for a lower volume, higher intensity approach, where perhaps you use bands. I know they're a little bit controversial, but I think for the average person looking to do these skills, I think that they like to get that exposure of something a little bit harder than what they can do, courtesy of the band, just to feel it out. I think that novel stimulus would excite a lot of people running this program. So that's something that I would have thrown in. If we're being absolutely perfect upon reflection, I would have reduced the hold times and gone a little bit more all out, although I can see the counter argument that would mean that it causes a lot more central nervous system fatigue. So I think you'd have to tread carefully there, but I do still think that would be a good idea. And the last point in this category that I could have changed or maybe would have liked to have seen done differently is for the lower body, it would have been nice to have seen some skills being worked in so that the program was working you towards something bigger at the end, as I alluded to a few moments ago. They did a fine job of doing this with the upper body. All of the program pretty much worked you towards the bigger skills and built you a base towards that. However, the lower body just seemed like it was almost on maintenance. Whether that was a fatigue management strategy on the half of calisthenic movement, I'm not so sure, but it would have been nice to see us working towards perhaps like a three standing sissy squat, perhaps working towards more advanced pistol squats or even the shrimp squat. You could have even done the Nordic curl. I know the Nordic curl is a little awkward to do and requires a little bit of equipment, but there's no reason we couldn't have worked towards a broader range of skills. I understand, as I just said, the argument of recovery. If you get too complex and too neurological with some of these leg skills, it can detract from the upper body and it makes the sessions harder. I do understand, but I still think that they could have juggled in some of those movements as well so that people feel like they're actually working towards some of the lower body skills as well as the upper body skills. Because believe it or not, guys, some of the lower body skills are still quite coveted within calisthenics and they are cool and fun to work on alongside the upper body. And let's face it, nobody should skip leg day. Nobody. And as my 5,938th disclaimer of all these videos, please take this criticism with a pinch of salt, guys. Who am I to be criticising a team like Calisthenic Movement? These are just things I was thinking about as I was trawling over it with all the knowledge that I have within the bodyweight training world and my experience as a PT and a coach. It wasn't easy to come up with critique for a program like this because they've done a very, very fine job at putting a complete program together. This is just the icing on the cake, and it is the icing on the cake only from the perspective of myself. So just keep that one in mind. This isn't supposed to be a harsh critique in any way. And that's another wrap. that is it, guys. This concludes the video. So overall, a really good program that is great to do if you're not already too advanced. I know some people I've spoke to in the comment section in the videos before have tried this program and they've already got skills, or they didn't find it did much for those skills. I can kind of see that point of view. If you're an intermediate stage, this is the program for you. If you're someone that's already got full front levers, planches, flags and all this, and can do one arm chin-ups and stuff, you're not going to get that much out of this program. It might serve as a deload, but who knows. Another thing with this program, if you are going to use this and you are a little bit more advanced, obviously not too advanced, you could even cycle in some of the phases in and out from your usual training. So for example, even the fourth phase that we've looked at in this video, you could cycle that in for 3 weeks every now and then as a break to go back to the more basic kind of foundational stuff if you are working on skills with other programs. I honestly don't think that would be a bad idea. You could cycle that in 2 times a year and even treat that with a progressive kind of fashion where you track what you did 6 months ago, you come back and you start at a little bit of a higher level. I could actually see that working quite well between me and you. Another logical question now would be where to next? What do you guys do if you've completed Calisthenic Movements Level 5 Mastery Program? What other good programs are logical to try to tackle on your journey forwards to get better? Well, one possible avenue is Misha Schulz's King of Weighted Strength program, which I actually have reviewed on this channel in one of my older videos. His program is all about bigging up or building your 1 rep max in the weighted movements like the muscle up, the pull up, the dip, etc. He also has a hypertrophy and skills program as well on his site, which is again aimed at intermediates and above. And a newsflash, because I've done that, that has higher volume muscle ups and a lot of different skills in it, direct front lever and planche work. So it's by no means there for the beginner, although he does have beginner programs on his site as well. So keep that in mind. Another option is friend of Calisthenic Movement, Daniel Vadnal, aka Fitness FAQs. He has some pretty cool specific programs on his website. He has Planche Pro, there's Lever Pro, there's Pull Up Pro. I think he's got Limitless Legs. There's his famous Body by Rings, I believe it is, which was his first program he released. There's a load of programs out there from him on the market. And as a slight teaser, I have access to Pull Up Pro, which is a program designed to get you better or even take you to the 1 arm pull up itself. So maybe down the line, I could be persuaded to run that. I did notice in the comments on some of the older videos as well, a few of you guys were mentioning that Psy Monsters programs could be fun to review. So over to you guys. Let me know down below in the comment section. I mean, let's face it, you've come this far, you've got to the end of the video. You might as well comment and let me know your thoughts. I've been spending the last God knows how long giving you my thoughts. Let me know of any programs you'd love me to see. If any particular program gets more upvotes than anything else, by all means, I'll invest in it, I'll run it, I'll document it, and I'll even try and make the documentation better than this program. So I can't say fairer than that, huh? Alrighty, we are there. So, thanks for watching the video, guys. If you did like this video, please support the channel with just a little thumbs up. You've only got to give it a little click. Subscribe if you like the nature of the content here and you like bodyweight training and fitness in general. Keep your eyes peeled for lots more content coming. As I say, I will keep my eyes open for suggestions for future reviews. And a teaser for you guys, coming up over the next few weeks, I will be doing a high pull-up tutorial. People want to know how to get better at muscle ups and do all the explosive pull-ups on the bar. I will give you my spin on muscle ups in a few weeks. So you've got to subscribe for that, haven't you? Surely. Turn on the bell notification so that when I drop that video, you, yes, you, will be one of the first to see it. Thanks again, guys. It has been a real pleasure reviewing this series, and I'm glad you've enjoyed it with me. See you in the next video. Peace out.